Physiologically, the only antidote to stress are these moments that I call renewal, but they're actually technically activation of the parasympathetic nervous system.
Welcome to the Leadership Initiative, where we explore the art and science of leadership through thought-provoking conversations with experts, thought leaders, and change makers. Whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting out on your leadership journey, this podcast is designed to provide you with the tools and inspiration you need to lead with purpose and make a meaningful difference.
So with this, we've gone 45 minutes and I haven't really talked about emotional and social intelligence. And I think a lot of people at least know you through that yes. doorway. Certainly those who might be listening to this, that's one of the ways that I bring you up in class in your work around primal leadership with Daniel Goleman. Just a quick question on that. You know, most of us have now accepted, thanks to you in many ways, have accepted like multiple intelligences, and one of that tipping points was the fact that emotional social intelligence became a thing, if you will, right? It became a thing that we also started to realize, though we thought of it personally. Oh yeah, there's an emotional intelligence, but now you kind of codified it for us. How have you seen it evolve since primal leadership, where do you think it's going?
Well, when I did one of the first ever competency studies in 1970, and then McClellan's article, Testing for Competence Rather than Intelligence, came out in 73, it was shocking and really punitively dismissed by all the existing people who were committed to their knowledge, skills, and abilities models. By 10 years later, it became a common topic of conversation. And by the early 90s, 20 years later, every organization was trying to do competency-based HR. The competencies are patterns of behavior organized around an underlying intent. And while we were doing all that, when Dan Goleman's EQ book came out in 1995, and certainly he was building on our competency research, but also people that were studying Reuven Bar-On and Jack Mayer and Peter Salovey had actually used the expression emotional intelligence. Howard Gardner had talked about 7 intelligences. That became an easy way for people to access it. So fundamentally, what we've been talking about and doing research on for now 60 years is that there are capabilities that we have that enable us to manage our emotions and to form relationships and maintain them. And that we call that emotional and social intelligence. The thing that is so important is that because we're studying, in our approach, we're studying at the behavioral level, it is eminently developable. And that's where you saw at Weatherhead, we've published, 39 different longitudinal studies showing that 25 to 65-year-olds can develop these things in ways that hold out even 7 years later. So when it comes to the process of change, it's crucial. Every aspect of learning or change involves exercising emotional self-control, which is inherently stressful. So you've got this, as soon as you're into it, you start to close down cognitively. And what you need is these PEA moments that physiologically open you up again. So every time you deplete and defend, you energize. Well, then we expand that into the other realms of our interpersonal interactions. And all of a sudden, we start to understand that the quality of our relationships are at the heart of anything. We published a study now about 6 years ago showing that research engineers, this was the R&D division of a Fortune 100 company in the world, had 850 researchers in their 2 research divisions, that their demonstrated emotional and social intelligence, as seen by others on their project teams, predicted 31% of the unique variance in their effectiveness. That means unique
31%
of the unique variance means controlling for IQ, personality, everything else.
That's a huge number
That
from
is,
a statistical perspective.
Yeah,
that's a massive number.
People drool at 5%, 31%.
That's a huge number.
Even an individual contributor job of being a bench scientist engineer, you have to be able to talk and work with people. Otherwise, nobody gives a damn about your ideas. So I think the cachet of emotional intelligence has taken on, and you even see people referring to it on TV shows, because it is common sense. I mean, we have to work our relationships, and
yeah, it is common sense. But one of the things that you've given us is an ability to talk to it, but ability to build it, right? And so one of the points you made there, which I'll just reiterate, and you and I have had these conversations before, which is there's an academic divide between some people feeling like it's emotional social intelligence is innate, and others who believe that it's learnable. You and I sit firmly in the it's a learnable state, right? And you have spent an enormous amount of time publishing the evidence to show that to be the case. And I live for that. That's what I do as a coach, primarily orienting around behavior. And we're not even talking about coaching here today. But the idea of and that it ties to vision too. It also ties to this idea of change, this idea that if I believe I can change, if I believe I can learn, that interwork matters enormously. And the PEA and the NEA can make that bloom.
Especially when it's done within the domains that we're talking about. Look, I can want to be 6'4", as much as I do and have for most of my life. But for most of my life, I was, somewhere close to 6'1". Now at 78, I've lost 2 inches. So, I'm just below 5'11". But the fact is, I would still love to be 6'4", but I'm not going to get there. And there's no amount. I'm not going to go through back extension surgery or leg extension surgery.
I guess you could do that, right? Yeah.
Theoretically. I mean, but the fact is that if it comes down to, it's like this guitar playing and me playing jazz. I mean, I worked enough gigs. When I was in high school, we had a group that played a lot of, Italian weddings and Greek christenings and VFW hall dances. I saved enough to pay for a year at MIT. So we worked a lot of jobs, but I stopped. And for me to go back to it now, I have this conversation about once every 2 months. One of the career counselors from Berkeley, which is the second largest college of music in the United States, second only to Juilliard, they call me and they say, well, for an extra $300 per course, you could get college credit toward it. And I laugh at them. I said, I've got two PhDs. What do I need another degree for?
Right.
And they said, well, maybe you want a certificate. I said, who am I going to show it to? I don't plan to take my guitar and go into the MTA subway station and play, so that people can toss dollars into my guitar case. I'm doing this for myself and my family.
One of the things that I was delighted to see, and let's talk about the science of change just in terms of its structure. So one of the things I've always admired about the work that you do is you break the mold of what leadership books, let's just call it that, and you create readable but practical work. This book in and of itself, Becoming a Resonant Leader, has such a practical component to it that I think has always been very foundational to your work. The work that you do always has an ability, and I think that's an intention of yours. As I think of you and know you, like you used to be the COO and you used to be, work in the world and in corporations and a CEO. And so that side. And I think that really has enabled you to write for people within that space well. So that being said, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. But when I was working with you, the Personal Sustainability Index was in draft form.
That's right.
And you gave me copies of it and I've utilized it. But if I were to point anybody into this book, and there's multiple places to point, but first you got to understand what ICT is and understand what the emergences are and get an understanding of the neurochemistry pieces. Those are critically important. But if you are a kind of person like me who tends to go to the appendix first to see what the stuff I can pull out of here is, Page 270 is the personal sustainability index. And so I want to stop on that just for a quick moment and let you talk about it, because I think the question could arise in people listening to this is, I'm so stressed. How do I just get out of this space? You're talking about renewal. What the hell is that? How do I get to that? And I really believe this is one of those ways to do it.
Right. We need stress. It's necessary, but
it got us up this morning, right?
That's right. But it's not good for you. So what most people don't appreciate, and even most of those scientists who study this, they keep thinking we should help people reduce the amount of stress. That's a fool's path.
Errand.
Fool's errand. Because it just means you're mildly impaired. You're still impaired. Physiologically, the only antidote to stress are these moments that I call renewal, but they're actually technically activation of the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, some of them have to do with things that you've heard about: meditating, yoga, the ones that are really well tested, Tai Chi, prayer, physical exercise. But some of them are interpersonal, helping someone in need, helping the elderly. I mean, I tell, as you know, my graduate students, helping your elderly professors will get you closer to heaven. Or laughing with friends or family, or having a playful moment with your dog or your cat, playing with your children. These are all key moments in which you literally, at the cellular level, are rebuilding your body.
So let me speak to a couple of those pieces there. One is, the coaching program that I'm building over at the James Cancer Hospital Center, I fall under the auspices not of HR, whoop whoop, but of wellness. And one of the practices we have, that's a whole different podcast to discuss about why that is the perfect thing. We take dogs around to the doctors once a month.
Right.
And Richard, if I could show you the videos of the emotional quotient of that room, everybody hunched over in this like pod farm of doctors, and they're all like hunched over and looking sad. And this wagging little collie walks through and comes up to everybody and smiles, and the whole room smells different. And it is it is a perfect example of a PEA experience that doesn't have to be robust. It doesn't have to be ridiculous. And the entire room, and one of the things about PSI is this idea of petting your furried animal creates a parasympathetic nervous system shift for you and the animal.
That's right.
My wife's
because of the emotional contagion.
Yeah. Absolutely. My wife's a big fan of what the Japanese called forest bathing, right?
Yes.
The idea of the nutritive value of walking in the woods. That is Jen emerges from her forest bathing a new person, a renewed person, I guess I should say more specifically. So I really want to emphasize that piece, because I think it's a lovely and a practical way of making these shifts.
And the link is that half of these activities that we know in terms of the medical research invoke this parasympathetic, this renewal, are interpersonal. And that means that we can be doing it every day at work. And one of the aspects, I think, one of the responsibilities of any person in a leadership position is to realize that he, she, or they should be invoking these moments of renewal in every meeting. They should start each meeting with one. They should, in their interactions with people during the day, invoke it. Because, as you said, it doesn't have to be an hour spent doing something. 10 minutes can really help people flip their hormonal balance. And for the sake of the organization, it increases their cognitive and perceptual performance.
And when you've talked about the nature of chronic stress, right, which is a different kind of stress, it's not the running away from the saber-toothed tiger for which our immune system and our system is built. It's this chronic stress, like too much snow on a roof, right?
Yeah.
So the same way that you approach this idea of chronic stress, which tends to layer almost insipidly and invisibly to the point of disaster, you can inoculate that in the same way. A little layer here, a pet a cat there, have a joke there. There's, and that's why I think it's very, very practical, and it's not, I can't do that, I don't have time for that, which tends to be a reaction.
And in the study that we published 3 or 4 years ago, a series of studies in that paper, we talked about the fact that it's better to have more 10 to 15-minute episodes during a day than a whole hour and a half at one time. Because what you're doing is on a regular basis, flipping you back into a sense of hope and caring, or compassion and energy. You're reinvigorating.
Yeah. And you know, my son Sam studying through, they have a combined major of physics and chemistry. So obviously he's studying constantly, but my only suggestion to him is play the guitar for 15 minutes, right? Just make sure that you, for every 45 minutes that you're evaluating whatever you're reading, just take your break, play your guitar for 15 minutes, and then go back. You will find that pattern will be renewing for you.
And that's on individual self-management. When you think about, as your podcast audience, leaders and emerging leaders, now you're in positions of some responsibility for others.
Right.
So now you want to use emotional contagion positively to invoke more of these brief doses of renewal throughout the day.
Yeah, be on alert for moments of renewal, because you can be the arbiter of such things in your leadership position. And you don't have to have all the answers. You can just spread a little bit.
And can be moments of playfulness where people laugh together. But the whole idea is...
So we are at the top of the hour, Richard. I feel like we're scratching surfaces here, but I want to always be mindful of your time. I'm sure you have multiplicities of these, but this was an absolute delight for me to at least go down some of these pathways. I hope it was beneficial to you.
Yes, it was. Thanks, John. I appreciate
it. It was fun to get back into this. You know, I do believe we didn't even touch on coaching, but you know, so much of this is perhaps just my mistake of I teach so much PEA and NEA and so much coaching for compassion. That I really wanted to sort of broaden our discussion here, because I think this idea of isomorphism, this idea of intentional change theory, I do think is so foundational to, and it's so relevant. So,
well, you can leave the coaching for another episode.
Thanks again for listening. This podcast is presented by the Max M. Fisher College of Business at The Ohio State University. For more episodes, find us on Apple, Google, or podcast.osu.edu/leadership initiative. See you next time.